Infected vermin, threads of disloyalty, flocks of rabid sheep with diabolic visions of primitive justice. What do all these metaphors have in common? The current state of the Supreme Court in America, yes, but more importantly, they also happen to be titles of magic cards by today's guest, artist Anthony Scott Waters. Illustrated, and in some cases, world-built. And who couldn't use an escape into a fantasy world right now? I know I could. It's either that or Thorazine. Enjoy the interview.
So thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
My pleasure.
I read that you don't really know how you got started doing art. You just sort of were drawn to it. Is that true?
According to Mom, and we have to keep in mind that parents always tell us exactly what they want us to believe. And I say that in the most loving way possible. Mom says that I was drawing from the age of like about 3. So It's always been something that I've been really passionately invested in.
And were they supportive of you? I mean, when you ventured out and started considering it as a career possibility, was your family supportive, or were they apprehensive?
Mom was supportive. She said the thing that one would expect of her generation. She was a child of kids from the Depression. So her follow-up line after saying, "That's fine, I figured that's what you were going to do," is, "But have a backup plan." Which is not bad advice anyway. As a friend of mine once told me, actually recently, when he advises young people who want to get into art, they ask him questions. His thing is, can you imagine doing anything else? And if you can, but you just can't stand the idea of doing anything other than art, pursue art. Otherwise, consider doing something else in art on the side, because art is a very, very difficult profession. And Mom knew that because she knew a couple of professional artists. So she tried.
Did you go to school for art? Did you study it, or were you somebody who was more self-taught?
Not initially. Actually, I went to Evergreen State College for music and writing.
Really?
Yeah. Back in the day, I was for about 10 years, I played classical guitar. And so I went to, which is weird because Evergreen is not, strictly speaking, music school. However, they had some great faculty, and they had some great writing faculty, including the guy who wrote, William Gibson, the guy who wrote Neuromancer. It was after I left college, and I made the decision that I'm going to throw myself into art, not music, that I started looking at local schools where I could get more education in art. And I found a place that still exists called the School of Visual Concepts, where I spent about 2 or 3 years learning all the stuff I didn't learn in Evergreen from professional illustrators, which was fantastic.
Were there any professional illustrators that you were sort of under while you were there that anybody that we would recognize?
Sadly, no, because of the way the industry has changed.
How do you mean?
The money really shifted over to the computer and the digital end of the entertainment industry around the mid 90s, late 90s. More and more money was being sunk into educational material online, not online, but digitally, and then online games became competitive with Hollywood for the amount of money that they were creating, and then surpassed it. But the need for conceptual artists, folks who did very high-end, carefully thought out creative imagery, like Guy Billot is the first person that comes to mind as a French illustrator. Looks like Guy Billout, if anyone wants to look him up. That stuff, the market kind of dried up. and photography started to replace a lot of illustration, because there were companies out there, stock photography companies, that realized they could make even more money if they provided generic illustrations for disputes in the office, arguments with a partner, feeling alone.
For advertising purposes, things like that.
Advertising, but also illustration in magazines like Psychology Today.
Right. Okay.
So increasingly, this pool of money that exists in the market just kind of left a lot of my instructors behind. The field that continued to be a pretty decent moneymaker was the brick and mortar industry, Dungeons and Dragons, and while I was while I was going to school at the School of Visual Concepts, during one of the figure drawing sessions, I ran into this guy named Rob Alexander. And we got to talking about making a living in the illustration industry. He was doing work for Wizards of the Coast, illustrating for Ars Magica, which was Peter Atkinson's first game concept. And he, I can't remember exactly when, but a few sessions in, he told me about this new game that Peter had, he hadn't developed, he was marketing for his company. And he knew the art director, would have liked to come and meet him. And so I had done work at this point for Microsoft and a couple of other gigs.
I read that you did Encarta.
I did.
I remember that program. Like that was the thing. Like back in like 93, 94, you'd get Encarta and you would be like, oh my God, like it's a talking encyclopedia.
Chickens, baby. Chickens and worms and bats. I did cutaway illustrations of critters and different kinds of chickens, and that was a ton of fun. I could talk about that for hours because I still have a friend from that gig.
What made it so fun? I mean,
geez. Okay, so what made it fun was also what made it frustrating and occasionally terrifying, because at this point, everyone was, in this case, Microsoft was really trying to make sure that everything was of a piece. And so they really wanted people to be as fluent with computers as possible. And I had flirted with computers prior to that point. There was a computer lab at Evergreen, and I plunked around on Apple IIs. And I had messed around, I had an Amiga for quite a while, and I messed around with that, did art on the Amiga. But when it came to work, I wasn't really prepared to work with computers. So when I started working on Encarta, it was all physical illustrations until one of the people that I was working for said, do you want to color them? Because we need them to be painted. And we kind of need them to be painted digitally so that we can keep them easily part of the pipeline. Are you familiar with any paint programs? Have you worked on a Mac before? It's like, sure. It's like, I worked for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you familiar with any computer paint programs? It's like, sure. I had messed with some on my Amiga. So I came into the office and we started working on Encarta using something called Studio 8. That's because it was an 8-bit program. And, we graduated to Studio 32. It was 32-bit. And then the word came down, switch over to Photoshop. So my first experience with Photoshop was Photoshop 3. And it was exciting because nobody knew anything.
Mm-hmm.
it was completely unknown territory. And so all of us were learning from each other. And that was cool. It was also terrifying because there were occasions where I'd be working on a job and they'd need something done. It's like, how the hell do I do this? I can't even, okay, okay, a few hours later, I've experimented with Photoshop and I've kind of come up with the workaround. But that was the nature of the job back then. It seems like everything was like, okay, this is a workaround. This will kind of work. It sort of works. I don't know why, but it does. So I'll move on to the next job.
And so I guess from what I understand, it maybe wouldn't be as high pressure as, say, the art world in general, with everybody sort of learning it as it's coming out. There's not as much chance for competition because everybody needs each other to understand how to do it, right?
There was a sense of camaraderie, right? We were all in hell at the same time, trying to figure out how to do this. And so we leaned on each other a lot. It is, I mean, I could go on for hours, so I'll just go on for a few minutes. I love.
No time limit. I find it interesting.
I appreciate that. And I'm enjoying the conversation. And one of the things that I find really exciting about the present age is that there are so many resources now for people. You don't even have to go to a major art institution if you don't want to. There are numerous schools like Imaginism and the New Masters Academy where you can learn a whole variety of techniques for a tenth of the cost of going to some place like SCAD.
Yeah.
And you're learning from professionals. You know, you're learning from Nathan Fowkes and Gerald Perkins. You can't get better than that.
Right.
And the programs have become incredibly robust. I mean, Photoshop is a much better painting tool than it has ever been.
Mm-hmm.
But you have Procreate, you've got Painter, and then you've got Rebel and just a host of other programs like ArtRage that are really fighting with Adobe to take over the role of a paint program and something that can manipulate photographs. So not only are the options much greater than what we had when I was first in the industry, which is really exciting to me, people are really making use of it and growing at a pace that if we were sort of transposing the present age with when I started, it would be absolutely terrifying because these kids are learning so fast.
Like warp speed.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Unfortunately, in many ways, they have to because the industry puts an inordinate amount of importance on speed.
Yeah.
And so they are forcing people to move very, very quickly, to learn very quickly, and they are rewarding that, encouraging people to really throw themselves into not only how well can they paint, but how fast can they do it. And that's a whole subject matter that I can get into at a later point. But I want to backtrack because I had started on this story about being with Rob Alexander. And he said, you know what? I know the art director of this new weird card game. Would you like to meet him? And I said, sure. I went with him to, as far as I know, the first official show of Magic artwork. It was held in Peter's garage.
Wow.
And you know those racks that are used in stores that sell, like comic book stores that sell magazines or sort of
like those like white plastic then they spin around or sort of kind of, or is it the ones that they have like at art galleries that sort of look like things that bougainvillea grow up on?
More like the former.
Okay.
Except line both sides of it with artworks from the first and second decks.
Who knew, right? Who knew?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, who could guess that
That's like there's hundreds of millions of dollars. Like,
and 20 years on, that's probably $100,000 worth of artwork or more.
Oh, I mean, I know that like some of those are sold in the millions. You know, like
crazy.
Yeah,
and wonderful at the same time.
It is. It's very neat. It is a phenomenon in the art world that I don't think has ever happened, where a group of artists who were basically undiscovered and had no experience then became superstars all at once as a group, you know?
Yep. And something I got to give Jesper enormous credit for. He was not.
Jesper didn't fuck around. Like he was on the lookout for the artists. He did care.
I think he very much wanted a product that had a diverse look. And I realize that's a charged thing to say in this present day and age. I don't mean it as a judgment. It was just something he was doing at the time.
I don't think that's true at all, because really with the way that Magic is going nowadays, they're doing alternate arts for every set. And there are things that are created now that are products that are standalones that are meant to look 100% different than what's being done. So I think
fabulous.
I think it was more prescient on his end. And I think a lot of what happened with Wizards of the Coast when it was initially bought over has been abandoned because those people are gone, and they've really embraced the fact that everybody likes those like weird looking, quote unquote, card art with their traditional looking ones.
We all were really, we were all journeymen at that point. We were all, like you pointed out, we were all really at the beginning of our careers. And Jesper leveraged that. He let a wide variety of styles into the product. And I had never been part of anything that was that diverse. And it was a real joy because you had people on one hand, like Quentin Hoover is one of my all-time favorites. Mm-hmm. And then you had Rob, and you've got two very extreme takes on art in those two people. Mm-hmm. And there was a ton of people in between, Melissa Benson and Doug Schuler and Dan Frazier and Anson and Mark, who were like, those were the high watermark guys for me, because
Anson's so wonderful. He's a wonderful guy.
He's a total sweetheart. Both of them are.
I haven't got a chance to speak with Mark yet, but Anson I've gotten to work with. Actually, he did a project for the channel. He's you're right, a sweetheart. Like, just so nice.
He is a really good soul, and so I think you're going to enjoy speaking with Mark when you get a chance, because he is
I believe so. I think if there's a triumvirate, if like you're saying he's great and then Anson's saying he's great, I'm like, that's pretty much like a guarantee. You know what I mean? Like you get enough good press. It's sort of like, that's what the case is. But back to what you were saying. So,
I mean, to mirror that, a number of years later, I was asked by Jesper if I wanted to join the concept team at Wizards of the Coast. And I had worked with Anson and Mark on a previous project. And one of the highest forms of praise I have ever received is when Jesper asked who they would want to work with. They said, well, either Ron Spencer or Anthony Waters. I'm being compared to the guy who essentially ruled the world of squirrels and Magic for decks and decks. And decks.
That is not a bad choice. That is not a bad person to be thrown in with. I mean, even if you lost, you'd be like, I was still in the running next to someone like that. So.
Yep. And the only reason I'm not going to say that. I think maybe one of the reasons why I won is because Ron was very happy where he lived.
Right.
He didn't want to move. So,
well, I mean, if that's the way you get it, that's the way you get it. I mean, like
right.
You know.
That's right.
So you worked, and what was the game that you worked on? What was the concept that you worked on with Anson and Mark?
It was for a now defunct company called Daedalus Games, And we did a whole bunch of concept artwork for a fantasy game that was based on the idea of being able to manipulate dreams and dream worlds. So it had parallels to the storyteller system that Werewolf the Apocalypse and Vampire the Masquerade used. But it was a world all on its own. And the art director at the time, who was Jesper, let me and Anson and Mark just go wild. He did not care.
Yeah, that sounds like him.
Yeah, and again, it bore fruit. I think I really wish that game had gone somewhere, because we had a ton of fun and we produced, I think, some really cool ideas. But that company.
Are those pieces still? Like? Do you have any copies of them, in a sense that, like, maybe images of them and things like that?
I still have all of my originals, and as far as I know, so does Mark.
Would love to see them if you are able to get them to me, because we can put them into the video as you're talking about them. If you're
sure.
If you're cool with that, and so I take it then. So Jesper approached you and asked if you wanted to be on the concept team for Magic, right?
Yep.
And what was that for? Was that for Alara, or was that for Kamigawa? I think you were on. Is that?
Okay, that was actually for the Wrath cycle.
Oh, okay, all right.
So going way back in time. And I worked from Wrath cycle through Portals 1 and 2, Urza Saga, all the way through Mercadian Masks. And then I was on the concept team in one form or another through Lorwyn.
And when you first came in as a concept team artist, I mean, what was different from working for Magic than, say, the other game that you worked on? What would like the changes be that were required of you?
Well, much more money.
That's not a problem. I mean,
hard to beat that one. More coordination. There was a game already that we could lean on. Mm-hmm. We had a dedicated art team and a dedicated design team, and it was much more purpose driven. I think that Daedalus suffered from what a lot of startups suffer from, which is lots of ideas but a lack of vision. And as a result, it just kind of fizzled. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I came on board Magic, they had just come off of Homelands, mm-hmm. I think. They were establishing a really strong storyline. They had a host of cool characters that people were falling in love with. And so they had a not only a product to, or not only a roadmap to use, they had a product to apply it to. And a lot of support personnel that they could hand a lot of the ancillary work off to, so that we could focus on just producing work, and the people who are driving us could just focus on directing us.
When you do a concept work, like, what is an example of something that you came up with? And I know it's a team effort. I know it's very much about people feeding off of each other's ideas, but was there an example of one of your sort of ideas that at least maybe had the least amount of changes done to it that came out into the games itself? Something along those lines.
Oh boy. I was largely left alone to design the interior of the Weatherlight. And that was just a kick in the pants.
In a good way or in a bad way?
Oh yeah, in a great way. I grew up with, among other things, a love of books with cutaway illustrations, like, books on ships where they do those 3/4 views of a battleship, and you get to see magazines and and all that jazz. So I got a chance to do that for the Weatherlight, and that was like a dream come true. I got a chance to create Argoth. The only person that really gave me a whole lot of um, I shouldn't say, I'm not going to put it that way. The guy that I leveraged the most for information and assistance was Pete Benners, because he was the one who had the most information in his head on Argoth. And Pete is to this day a walking magic encyclopedia.
Yes.
I could ask him a question about anything from any era of magic, any deck, and he would know something about it. But he said, this is kind of what I started with, and the island's going to get destroyed. So go have fun. It's like, okay, whatever I get to make is going to get wiped off the map. But what the hell? I got a chance to design the island from the ground up. They left me alone to create the ecosystem. They left me alone to create a whole culture for the elves that live there, for the druids that live there.
Wow.
And I was like a kid in a candy store. And every concept I came up with pretty much got written off. They were like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. We'll do that. Sure.
That's so cool. And then you get the added additional, like, wonderful experience of seeing other artists bring your design concepts into with their own, eye. That's
the best. That was the best thing about the job. When I was working on the Wrath Cycle, I designed the Vec. And to this day, that came in. And I stared at that painting. It feels like it probably was only like 10 minutes, but it felt like I had fallen into it. It was so exciting to see our rough concepts taken and then made wonderful, made alive in the way of a frame out of a Kurosawa film, and Mark has that.
He has that he has that flair, that sort of like.
It's a characteristic of his work that when he puts people in proximity to one another, it feels very much like something out of a Kurosawa samurai film.
I wonder if he's a fan of that. I wonder if he is. That'd be interesting to know.
I don't know, but I hope one day to be able to talk to him about it, because it's one of the things I love about his work.
Oh, well, I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, like, you should definitely, I mean, like, we could cut this out, but I mean, like, I'll send you his email address and, but,
please.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, he's super nice. I mean, when we had a conversation, we literally talked for close to 3 hours. Like, he's like, yeah. So the way that you just told this story here, I mean, you were, getting emotional telling it. And I mean, like, I can't see him being, it was wonderful. So yeah, no, not a problem. I'll send you his information afterwards. And just, I'll, even if you want, I'll be like, hey, this is just an interview with this guy's, but so you never really got the interesting, though. You didn't get a chance to interact with a lot of these artists, I bet, even though you were the concept design, you just, you got to interact with who you could interact with. And that was that.
As the opportunities to go to events appeared, I got to meet more and more of these folks, which was grand. And I did have conversations with them periodically. I worked as Matt Wilson's proxy for a little while. And so I got to talk to Paolo Parente, who sounds like he sounds like a movie star. It's like you pick up the phone, this is Paolo Parente. Like, oh my God.
Intimidation.
Oh, it's more like swooning. My God. And of course I had again had a chance to hold his paintings in my hand and say, oh my God, this guy is amazing. Another person that gave me a moment like Zug did was Donato Giancola. I designed something for the Weatherlight called the Sky Shaper, which was the thing that permitted it to go between planes.
Mm-hmm.
And I made this weird contraption that looked like a bug chrysalis, if a bug chrysalis was sort of a Jules Vernean device. And he was assigned the painting of Karn holding this thing aloft.
Mm-hmm.
And that painting came in, and I just felt like I was walking on air, because somebody had taken my idea and run with it and made it look like it could be in a museum.
Wow. I'm getting chills just hearing you say that. That's so cool. I mean, I've gotten a chance to anybody, and I've heard an art director give me this side, or concept person give me this side of the story. And that is such a cool thing to think of. You have these people, these master artists interpreting your designs. That is so cool.
Oh, and this is the thing that people who come to my table hear this all the time. So all those people who have heard it multiple times, I apologize in advance. But I have done a lot of concept work for a wide variety of clients over my career. And the vast majority of the work that I have done, I am satisfied with the work that I did. I'm okay with putting my name on it. I got a paycheck, which is very important.
Yes, yeah.
But that's it. When you work on a game with 200 other people, the point is not to stand out. The point is to make boulders and trees and weapons, and it's a collective effort that goes out into the world. And maybe people absolutely love the game, but you don't really get a chance to find out how the work affects people. And with Magic, I have been able to not only talk to artists, but I've been able to go to events and talk to players. And this is not checkers. This is not a game that, you make, okay, again, I'm being judgmental. You can have a great memories with your uncle playing checkers as you were an 8-year-old, but it's totally different to me when someone comes up to me and says, I was going to college at the time Urza Saga came out, and Magic was the way that I got to meet people on campus and form friendships. And so this deck is really important to me.
Yeah.
That is magical. That does not happen.
And that's the power of it, is that the people become, they sort of have like a sense memory attached to your work. Mm-hmm. When they have something wonderful happen to them while they're playing the deck, or like it's just and I always say, whether or not they're responding to the work itself or to the memory associated with the work, in the end, who really cares? I mean, it's still a wonderful, connection to a piece of work that you've done that you can never, I don't think you can really get that kind of response unless you are, say, a famous musician and you go on tour and you get to do meet and greets. But as artists, though, that's not really something that's common.
No. And it is really motivating to have somebody come to you and say, this piece of art is really important to me because of X, because of something that happened in my life. That is what an artist lives for, because the whole point of art is communication,
right?
Storytelling, and to mirror the experience of others. You get something that's a work of art that people can connect to, because they can connect to the experience within the image, what it's like to be lonely, what it's like to feel under attack, what it's like to escape into a world and pretend for a while that you are the warrior on top of the dragon, going to right wrongs and beat the crap out of the bully who made you feel like shit when you were in grade school, in the form, of course, of a giant that is like, this is going way meta.
But it's a healthy way to give yourself an escape from the very real cruelties of being a human. We all suffer from them.
Yeah. And it stimulates your mind at the same time.
It's a win-win.
It's a very challenging game. And it's only gotten more challenging since I started doing art for it.
And I doubt that there are people coming up to people at conventions saying, would you sign my checker?
Haven't had that ever happen, even though I had nothing to do with the design of checkers.
No, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, is that like, that had to be, I mean, it's lost to time in Wikipedia, probably. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but what, if you could think back, and I mean, and if you're willing to discuss it, I don't know how like deep these go, but what was one of the most like incredibly moving experiences you had when somebody came up to you as a fan and said, this is what?
I am happy to, I'll talk about anything. I'm an open book. I have had people tell me that decks that I have worked on, artwork for those decks, artwork that I did for those decks, were one of the things that helped get them through really dark times where they have lost a relative, parent, or a sibling. I mean, it's a powerful thing to have someone come up to you and say, you know, I love these forests from Urza Saga because of the aforementioned story. I got to meet people in college.
Yeah.
But it's a step beyond that to have someone say, I could look at this image and it made me feel peaceful at a time when I was just in pieces.
Yeah, like that you sort of were the lifeboat, or the life, you know, the floating device that when somebody's lost at sea, they have something to grab onto.
Yeah. Again, connection, creating artwork that is meaningful because it tells a story people can directly relate to, emotionally relate to.
I would lose it if somebody, I mean, like, I would be crying. I mean, like, I'd be like, it's just because it's so moving.
I've teared up with fans.
Oh, well, I mean, I couldn't blame you. I mean, like, absolutely. I'm tearing up now, and it's you know.
Absolutely. I've teared up with fans. And again, that's one of the things that is special about this game. I just remembered something that was really powerful for me. Years and years ago, and I think it was the first event of its kind I ever attended, there was a show in Utah. It was me and Therese Nielsen.
Oh, okay.
And I met a young man, and by young I mean he was like 12, and he sat with me for the entire show, right next to me. It was like 12 hours, and I'd sign cards and we talk, and I'd sign cards and we talk, I'd sign cards and we talk. Fast forward to, I want to say, a couple of years ago, and I'm at an event, and this guy approaches me, who I would say is probably early 20s, and he says, I don't know if you remember me, but you attended an event in Utah, and you let me sit beside you for the entire show and talk your ear off. And then he followed with, and I just want you to know that was inspirational to me. And the things that you said really stuck with me. Oh, and now I own a gaming store.
Oh, wow.
Because he was like, I want to go off and do this thing, so I'm going to go do this thing.
Wow, that's so cool.
Oh, it felt like I felt like I was walking on air for the rest of the event. Because it's like, I inspired someone. Oh my God.
Well, that's wonderful. And you know, that is the thing though, that is almost like it's that I really do appreciate the actual like appreciation that you have for getting these stories, because, you know, you hope to inspire. And if you're successful as an artist, you can probably bank that you have inspired, but to know that you've inspired, to know the actual like story and the person, that is something else. That's very special.
That's the kind of thing that makes you want to keep on painting.
And the good thing about your painting too that is interesting is the sort of like the shift of when you first started with Magic versus your later years. How would you say that your style changed over those times?
I would say that at the beginning I was very much trying to figure out who the hell I was. And I also look back on those paintings with mixed feelings. Because as with pretty much everyone else who was working on magic at the time, they were student work.
Okay.
To me, I was figuring out how to work in watercolor because, okay, again, God, so I apologize for fracturing the story, but
no, what?
Rob takes me to Peter's garage, and I get to see all of this art. I get to meet Jesper. I bring my portfolio, and my portfolio is primarily Encarta art, and colored pencil, because that was the thing that I was really in love with at the time. And Jesper looked through my book and looked at me and said, "So, do you want to paint some cards?" I'm like, "Sure, but we need you to paint them because we've tried to work with colored pencil, and the wax makes it next to impossible to get accurate colors. It
doesn't scan well either. Yeah,
nope, not at all." So I was like, "Are you okay with painting?" It's like, "I'm taking watercolor classes." Sure.
I'm gonna have to.
It's like so many things at the early part of my career were, I feel awkward about it because, yay, I threw myself into it, but I led with a lie. It's like, okay.
I'm not blaming you. I'd have done it. I mean, I think anybody with half a brain like Sal would do it. I mean, it's like, you have to do it. If you're getting an offer to do something cool, I mean, I've lied my way into tons of things. I mean, and I'm proud of it because in the end it works out. It only is bad if you get caught. And then that's dubious morals. And that's not your morals, it's my morals. And of course I didn't mean anything I said there. That was totally hypothetical. Yeah.
I am hearing you on FM. And I would add that neither of us are advocating lying about something that would necessarily hurt somebody.
No lies about hurting people. Lies just about, you can lie about things like, oh, I didn't eat the last cookie, or I know how to paint.
Yep. And it's, again, this is one of the ways in which the world has changed because there are so many resources out there. There's a lot you don't have there's a lot I fibbed about that kids don't need to fib about now.
Right.
They can get that skill set. They don't have to learn on the job.
Right. Like, for example, like the fact that there's reference photos on the internet, like, you know,
everything.
Like, pardon me?
Of everything.
It's
everything.
It's insane. I mean, I think about back in the day, you guys had to go to the library and get out a magazine and hope that it was a picture of whatever it is that you're looking for that wasn't, you know, that suited your designs. And it that seemed like, it probably could have turned up being like an endeavor, the research that you had to go to do.
I used to have something that was a thing called a scrap file, where I had, and I'm not kidding, I had 3 drawers of a 4-drawer file cabinet filled with pages for magazines.
Oh yeah.
All kinds of birds, all kinds of people, all kinds of costumes. It was huge. And I regularly went to half price books. In part because I needed the reference. In part because I told myself I needed the reference because Half Price Books was my crack house.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I spent a great deal of money there.
I miss bookstores. I miss them.
Yeah, it took a lot to wean me off of Half Price. And it is still a wonderful place. And I'm really hoping that we continue to get a little bit of normalcy around the whole concept of used books and being able to do all that business. But I still have an awful lot of my art books because I love them dearly.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are some that contain pictures that I've never found on the internet. But I found almost everything else. And so I started doing what Brom did years ago, which was get rid of most of Brom got rid of almost all of his books. Because it's like, as he said to me, it's like, I have the internet.
Yeah.
They just take up space and they're heavy. I still love the feeling of opening a book and flipping through it for ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. And some people, with the way they work, like that tactile experience could be part of your process, you know?
Oh yeah. At the same time, well, I don't intend to move again, but moving books is just not fun.
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah. I mean, like that. Yeah. If there's ever a time to downsize, it's when you're moving. You're like, I don't know if I need a hardback copy of this. Like,
Yep.
I don't think I need a 20-pound Anne Rice.
When your friends are helping you move and looking at you and saying, really?
with disdain and sweat.
This is the 20th box of books. Really? Do you need this? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the truth too, because I'm one of those people too. It's like, I have them, but there are some books that I have that I haven't really even, I got them and I will read them, but I had to have them. So it's sort of I sympathize with your book problem.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. There are a pair of artists, Carol Beckwith and Barbara Fisher,
mm-hmm.
and they have a series of books. The first one called Africa Adorned.
I know that book. I know that one.
Haha. Okay, so they've done a whole series of them. The last one I'm aware of is called African Arc.
Yes.
And the first time I saw that book, it was at Half Price Books, and I looked through it for maybe 10 seconds, and I was just like,
buying it.
This is mine.
Yeah.
And it translated directly into the Beck. Because I was given an afternoon to design the Beck.
Wow.
And I managed to turn that into 3 days. Thank you, Jesper, for giving me that space. But I had gotten that book maybe 6 months beforehand, and I just immediately went there because it's like, okay, I know who I want. I don't want a Western culture. I don't want them to look like your typical fantasy people. I want to see what I can get from this book. And if you look through that book and you look at like the jewelry that was made
insane.
From, oh my God, especially the amber.
I mean, yeah.
And the henna patterns on the skin.
It's like, how did people do that? I mean, the amount of craftsmanship that, and it boggles the mind.
It does. And that translated directly into the back. In the same way, when I was working on Urza's Saga and designing the elves, I specifically went to Australasia as a reference point. Quick story because of that. A series that was super influential on me when I was a kid was called The Ring of Fire. It was about these two brothers, Lawrence and Lauren Blair. In the late 70s, they both figured out they really just were not cut out for jobs. And so they had to try and figure out what they were going to do with their lives. One of them picked up the book by Sir Alfred Russel Wallace concerning his voyage to the Aru Islands, which is where the greater bird of paradise lives. He was famous for coming up with the theory of evolution at about the same time as Charles Darwin. In fact, he wrote a letter to Charles Darwin from, I think, New Guinea or the Aru Islands saying, "Hey, Chuck, I have this weird idea.
Okay.
I've been looking at birds, and what do you think of this?" And Darwin was writing Origin of Species at the time. And he got that letter and just was like, I have to finish the book before he gets back to Britain because I have to be the one who came up with it.
Isn't that crazy how that seems to happen in human society? Like, it seems like people have the idea like independently of one another. And it is really a race of who gets it out first.
It is. And Wallace has largely been lost to history, but one of the brothers picked up this book and went, I know what I want to do. We should go to the Aru Islands and see if we can find the greater birds of paradise. Ridiculous, but what the hell? They give it a shot, and they spent the next 10 years traveling through Micronesia. They were the first people ever to capture the greater bird of paradise on film, doing its mating dance. They were, in the course of their journey, they sailed with pirates, and they went to cultures and went to islands that had these vibrant cultures and filmed them. And these cultures don't exist anymore.
Oh, that's sad.
It is extremely sad, but it is a wonderful thing that somebody gave a damn and wanted us to see what those people were like. They hung out, as it turns out, with the Papua New Guinean tribe that probably ate Michael Rockefeller. They did all sorts of stuff. And it was this 4-part series called The Ring of Fire. And I was just absolutely blown away with what I saw. Because that area, Micronesia, Australasia, include Java and Sumatra, Bhutan, Bali, which is where they ended up settling, Papua New Guinea. All of these islands have an incredible just variety. It's like take the rest of the world and stuff all those cultures in one place.
Yeah, it's very jam-packed.
Oh my God, and so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And I directly referenced that material. They had a book that came along with the series, and I directly referenced the cultures from Sumatra. There's a specific culture in Sumatra that has a lore that they came from the Pleiades. And their houses are shaped like arcs, because that was the mythology, is that's what the spaceships look like. And I'm not kidding. This is like, it's not like they use the word spaceships, but it's like, we came from the Pleiades and these are the boats we sailed in to get down here.
Interesting. Yeah.
And at each ends, they have these incredible carvings of mythological creatures. And again, the brothers were there for the death celebration of the last king of these people. The Javanese government had banned the existence of any king within their...
like no more monarchies or anything like that, something?
No sub-tribes. So you're going to be part of the greater group. And so this was the last celebration for the death of the last king of these people. They sacrificed 100 bulls.
Jesus.
They had dancing for 3 or 4 solid days. And I'm not kidding. People would film this.
Dance to death? I mean, like...
They just dance until they were exhausted.
Yeah, right?
And then move on. And the wife of that king had lived beside his body for 10 years.
Like...
He's in the deathbed.
And she...
lived in that room with him for 10 years.
By choice?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. That can't be good for you.
I don't think it is either, but not my culture.
Right. I mean, I'm not throwing any judgment. I'm just saying I think that it would take me about 5 seconds before I would start to reconsider.
I'm like, I am totally with you. No, I loved him. I am not staying beside his corpse.
Like, I'd be like, I loved him, not his corpse. So
yeah, put him in the ground. That's what you do.
It'll help with my grieving process, I think.
There's that. But it took like a decade to get everything together so they could have this final grand celebration.
This sounds like it was an event.
Oh, it's never going to happen again.
And so this kind of thing, this kind of background you put into the designs of the elves, and it is fascinating. Pardon me?
And Argoth as a whole.
And so then then you do these really fascinating, these pieces that you've done, like for instance, like Stalking Vengeance or Tar Fiend, where you are almost, they're not hallucinogenic per se. I mean, they have elements of it, but they're very like chaotic, and you almost have to look really hard to see the monster in the what appears to be like a storm of just like, you know, vibrant art coming at you. Like, when did you start adapting that kind of style? Because it's prevalent in a lot of your pieces for for Kamigawa and for let's see here, you did it for I'd say Kamigawa was really where a lot of it was from, but some in Ice Age too.
I learned a lot about painting thanks to magic. I got a lot out of the early years working with watercolor and then gouache. But when I started working again digitally, when I broke out Photoshop, the way I worked led me down a much more abstract path, because I discovered I could draw a sketch of what I roughly wanted to do, but then I'd bring in photo collage. I'd start grabbing patterns of leaves and manhole covers from Japan and dog paw pads, and just start throwing those shapes together and moving them around in Photoshop, because, you know, Photoshop has got all sorts of settings you can apply to layers, and it's also got filters you can apply. So I just start throwing stuff together, and like Tarfine is a great example because the finished painting still sticks pretty much to the drawing, but I created it by throwing all sorts of weird textures together, and then I would carve out the shape and twist and turn it until it felt like I finally had something that felt cohesive. Mm-hmm. But I tend to ride that edge of readability because I find it kind of exciting to see if I can. I find it exciting to try and come up with something that is extremely strange looking, but you can still connect with it.
Right, like Stalking Vengeance. It's like a combination of like it's some sort of rodent, but it's also got this otherworldly like look to it. I mean, it's and then I'm not sure what's at the bottom. I mean, because I only have a small image in front of me, but it looks like it's either gravestones or possibly people. Not quite sure, but the creature is just fascinating. I mean, like it's this. I mean, what was the inspiration behind that? I mean, do you just find like it looks like almost like you borrowed from like say maybe a rabid armadillo or something, and just.
That guy is a combo of maple leaves.
Oh wow!
I forget the name of the. I think in maple seeds, the little propeller seeds.
Okay,
that's what those wings are in the back.
Wow.
And fish skulls.
Okay.
Rodent skulls. And then the inspiration for the vibe is one of my absolute favorite artists. He's a Polish artist named Zlatoslaw Beksinski.
Mm-hmm.
I strongly advise anyone who is interested in unsettling, fantastical art to look him up.
It's done as soon as we're finished.
He is hugely inspirational for me. His ability to capture an otherworldly vibe is unparalleled. And for this image, I was tasked with creating a creature that was an assembly of the spirits of the unjustly murdered, the unjustly
like the wrongful death had happened.
Wrongful death, people who had been victims of genocide.
Right. Yeah. Like
victims of slaughter.
Someone who had gone to jail and executed for something they didn't do.
Yeah. So those stones at the bottom are gravestones, but instead of having inscriptions, they've got skulls and faces that have been all wrapped up in leather and tied in. And then those are the legs of the creature.
Oh,
the same
wow.
shapes are applied to the legs. So it's like they're going up the legs and then forming into, I mean, I love the idea. I was so excited when I got the card because I love the concept of a massive beast that is just built to take down the people who did this great wrong.
Yeah. There's a justice to it.
Mm-hmm. And I love the concept of implacability, that you've done something terribly wrong and the thing that's coming after you, you cannot defeat. You can run from it, and that's as good as you're going to get.
Yeah, it's inevitable that it will be getting you and that you will be. I mean, and I like that too, because in the real world, we don't get that kind of justice. You know, bad people get away with things and that they just get away with it. So it's almost comforting to see a creature like that who is righting the wrongs of something. Yep. That, you know, it's why we do, you know, why we're fascinated by fantasy, why we're fascinated by art. It's a way to give voice to the injustice. Yes. And I think another one that I really love too, because I'm a horror person myself, but I would say that I might be pronouncing it wrong. Shimian Spector.
Yes, Shimian Spector. Oh boy,
that one is just ridiculously cool. I mean,
thank you.
The angles and where it's just fantastic. Was that based off of anything specific as far as like, where do you take the design from for that?
I did a quick sketch. They approved it. Dana approved it. And I just started, as with Tarfiend, I just started slapping things down. And the thing I love about that technique is that it always surprises and challenges me. And so I wanted this extreme perspective of this creature flying up at you and you're looking down.
Right. It's like it's on a castle. You're looking down from like a castle wall or something.
Mm-hmm. So I had to, whatever I threw at the wall had to, metaphorically, it had to stick. Right. You had to be able to tell what the hell it was by the time I was done. And so I painted over a lot of the stuff that I combined. I would take elements of the textures that I would like, and I'd combine that with the other textures I had slapped down, the other things that I had slapped down. But I had also picked up a book about a monastery in Italy that has a whole bunch of oddly preserved corpses.
Oh my goodness, right.
And I mean, they go back centuries. These people who have been very curiously...
they're like mummified.
Yeah, but they're dressed, right? Yes. So they're in their robes. They're wearing their hats, and they're these weird, strange, distorted...
That rictus, the death rictus kind of...
Mm-hmm. And yet, at the same time, there's this weird holiness to it, right? Because they're not put up for display. They're put up
to be revered.
Yeah, exactly, reverence. But I wanted to capture the strangeness of it, and so that's why the weird bat thing that the guy is flying has weird coins for eyes and a strangely distorted head. And yeah, because I was inspired by the strangeness of the mummified faces.
This is so cool. I mean, it really, I mean, the amount of research and sort of, you almost create a whole myth for yourself of each piece that you do. And that's just, it's super engaging. I mean, like now I'm like, I could ask you about every single one because there's a lot of time. There's not necessarily all artists work from that sort of where they need to get sort of a myth going in order to create. Everybody has their own way. I just, as a writer, am driven to I love a good backstory. That makes sense. Yep. And so like when you like, I guess my question would be, which was the most difficult piece that you did for Magic that you worked on, like as far as The one that was it killed you, but you may not, you don't necessarily have to have hated it. It was just a real bitch to just get out.
The first one that immediately comes to mind is Circular Logic.
Okay.
Because that card came to me with the provisional title of Death Counter. And the description was a black spell being disrupted by a blue spell.
Mm-hmm.
And Dana assigned it to me, and I'm like, do you have any idea what you want? Because this could be anything. And he said, no, just go, just have fun.
And that was the one that really that was the one that nailed you, because I would think by looking at it, I would assume that the other pieces that I've seen seem so much more detailed and so much more like focused. Whereas that one, you'd assume as somebody is a non-artist, I'd assume, oh, well, it would be easier to do because it's like just swirling designs. But that was the one that gave you the most difficulty. And what was that? Why do you think it did that? Just because it was too obtuse of an assignment, like brief?
I realize now I have learned an awful lot about myself over the past 15 years or so. One of the things that I've learned is that I've got ADHD.
Okay. And
so the good side of ADHD is that I have a mind that won't shut up. And it drives me to try and figure stuff out. I won't say the bad side, but the challenging side for me is my mind gives me too many options.
Right.
And so when it came to this, okay, it's a black spell being disrupted by a blue spell. What does that mean? That can mean 25 different things. And I looked through magic cards other people had done showing different kinds of spell effects. It's like, well, I could go in this direction, or I could go in that direction, or like, how am I going to do? And I struggled with it for that reason. And it's like, I really want this to read, but it could be anything. So it took me a lot of time talking with myself, stripping stuff back and going, well, it can be one thing. It's got to read clear. What's the easiest thing that I can go with a black spell? How about a cloud of black screaming faces? That works.
That'll work.
What is the basis of blue? It's like, it's water. I'm going to put a weird water cyclone bursting through the ground and disrupting a big black smear.
Yeah.
It's got faces in it. And I showed it to Dana, and Dana's like, yeah, this will work.
And you're like, oh, I suffered so much for that.
Like, I'm not going to say a word, because I'm going to tell him how much that was a real struggle to put together.
And of course, the piece behind me, Cinderwall, that was featured in Spectrum, right?
Yep. Thank you, Jeremy Cranford.
Well, you had a little part in it too, of course. But
well, there's a reason I say thank you, Jeremy Cranford, because the initial piece that he suggested was Cinderwall was made up of like just millions of flaming cinders, and I messed with it, and I wrote him and said, look, I have an idea. I will paint the wall you want.
Right.
But since I have the time, I also want to show you what I think might be cool, and see if you dig it. And it's totally okay if you don't. And the piece that you see behind you is the piece that I gave him that was my alternate. And he went with it.
Okay, I gotcha. All right. So that's there. I understand now. So that's really cool. I mean, like, it seems like that kind of flexibility is it's not a given in that kind of world.
Not in art in general. People very much want you to follow their directions, so you have to be careful about how much headway you give yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to get too interpretive because then you can lose the good faith. Do you have the original version available for you to like a photo of it or anything like that? Or
I'll have to go digging and see if I can find it.
Because anything like that, I mean, and I'm serious, like any of the pieces we talked about, any sort of cool, like sort of behind the scenes stuff that is okay for you to share, or you're willing to share. That's what this is all about. Because for me, this project, this channel that I worked on is sort of I wanted to be an archive for people who, can try to look and get the information of it, because there's not a lot of interviews being done with artists, period, which chaps my ass. So that's why I figured I'd do it. But anything like that, I love.
Okay. There's all sorts of stuff I can send you. I can send you concept art from Urza Saga. I can send you stuff from what did we call that? Mirror Veil. That's what that game that I worked on with Anson and Mark was called.
Yeah. Anything. I mean, it's like I live for it, and it's just it's really cool to see the embryonic to the embryonic stages to the final ones. I mean, I know that it's a personal choice for some artists to think, and I don't blame artists who don't want to put their steps out, because it's a private process for whoever's doing whatever. But when people do, I find it so enlightening.
I love finding out what people's process is, whether they're a poet or a writer or a photographer or a painter.
Yeah.
I love finding out where they're coming from, why they're coming from that space, how they get to that space, whether it's how they create a character or how they interpret an image, or how they choose which of the 25 pictures that they have taken of a given subject is the one that sings.
I agree. Yeah, it's fascinating. And I know some artists worry that it's going to like overtake the point of like they want the audience to have their version of it. But I'm from belief that when I hear what the artist's intention was, that does not stop my feelings about how I interpreted it. They can. I believe they can mutually, exist.
They absolutely can exist in the same space. Once I create an image or anyone creates something, again, whether it is a story or a piece of art, when it goes out into the world, it is immediately part of a dialogue.
Yeah, it's no longer yours to
Ours.
Yeah.
Ours,
yeah.
Right?
And it's always got to be, it's always cool when you could probably have somebody come up to you and say, actually, this is what I interpret when I see this. And you go, I didn't even think that, but I can totally see where you're coming from.
Yep. All the time. Because people are bringing their own imagination to it, right? Their own experience. And so they're going to bring to the table an experience and a narrative that I don't know I could come up with because I haven't lived their life.
If you had unlimited funds and you could purchase any painting in history, or any paintings, if a few of them, which ones would you purchase?
Boy. I would fill my house with John Singer Sargent's.
That's so funny you said that. Somebody I interviewed yesterday said the exact same thing.
Oh my God. There are certain painters who seeing their work for the first time in person was an intensely moving experience.
Right. It's almost religious.
Oh God, yeah. Thomas Moran, seeing his pieces for the first time. I had never been in the presence of a canvas that big.
Right.
His piece of the Grand Canyon is mammoth. It's like bigger than a billboard.
Yeah, and you wonder how do you even start?
Oh, man. The pleasure, though, of seeing it in person is to see how loose it is, right? So it's so loose that you can actually see the drawings underneath. So you can see how he just hammered stuff in.
Wow.
It's like, okay, I know the feeling I'm going for, and I've been there, and I've got a bunch of pictures. So just here's a big shape, and then just slapping on huge brushstrokes of paint. But from 20 feet away, you can fall into that thing.
Yeah. It's amazing and it's amazing that somebody had that sort of foresight to know that the end product was going to do that from a distance. To have that already figured out in your head is something else.
Oh God, the any one, if not all of, no, I would steal all of.
No, you don't have to steal them. You got the money.
Oh, that's right. I get to buy it. Okay, so I would buy the castle that holds all of Alphonse Mucha's Slav epic.
Okay, now is this castle private, or is this is it a private residence, or is it open to the public?
It's open to the public.
Okay, good. At least that was the case, because I really don't like the fact that people buy these incredible pieces of artwork and just hide them away. I'm like,
no,
cool, man.
Don't put them in a vault.
Right.
They're supposed to be experienced. They were painted to be experienced by.
Yeah. Let them go on tour. You'll get more money if you do that anyway, right?
Yeah, don't, and you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
So don't steal that experience from the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. Those fuckers.
Oh yeah. But you get lots of money and you get weird ideas in your head. So that's, again, I would want people to be able to experience that. But I also would absolutely roll in the sheer joy of seeing those paintings every day.
Right. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Slav epic?
I vaguely, but refresh my drink and I'm, because I mean, if you feel like you can do it justice, and I don't want to keep you for good, but I for too long, but I am loving this. So it's up to you.
I'm having a ball. All right.
Okay. So well, then I do not feel bad.
Okay. This was during the 30s, when there was a great deal of pressure coming from Germany to the people in what is now the Czech Republic, was then Czechoslovakia. There was a strong German population there, and there was a lot of pressure coming from Germany to celebrate German history, celebrate German culture. And Alphonse Mucha was one of the people who pushed back against that, saying, hold on a second. The people of the Slav people, the people of this area, have a huge and rich and diverse history, and we should not be tucked under somebody's skirt tails. We deserve to celebrate our history.
Right.
And so he set himself up in front of 9 canvases, and over a very short period of time, and I'm talking big canvases, he painted these beautiful they were like fairy stories. They were like folk tales of various parts of Slavic history.
Oh, wow.
But painted as if they were biblical epics. I mean, it's like Ben-Hur compacted into one painting, but 9 of them. So they're overwhelming.
They give gravity to them.
Oh, intense, an intense distillation of identity, but a celebration of, as opposed to, they're not nationalistic paintings to me. They are very much a celebration of ordinary people, as well as the big figures.
Well, yeah, it sounds like if this is being done because another culture is telling you that you need to subjugate your own culture for ours, this is almost an act of defiance. It's not done to be like overly proud or to have some sort of false belief. It's there to say we're here and we won't be ignored. Yes,
it was pushback saying we have a right to be who we are. Mm-hmm. We have a right to celebrate, our history of subjugation and liberation, and the form of arts, the music, the food that they came up with, and that became a part of their culture. And he died, I think, not all that long after he had completed them, but they were his masterwork.
Magnum opus.
Oh yeah, in every sense of the word. And I would love to be able to see those paintings on a daily basis.
I see. I wonder how big they are. When you say large canvas, do you mean like along the size of like Guernica, where it's like it would take up an entire like gallery kind of thing?
I don't know that it's as big as that one. I think they are competitive with Thomas Moran's painting of the Grand Canyon. So
okay.
Again, billboard sized.
Yeah, that's still huge.
Oh yeah, and I want to say that he completed them in like 3 years.
Yeah,
that's 9 paintings, and they're figurative. They've got all these people in them, and they're really elaborate compositions, and he just knocked them out.
There must have been almost like a possession, like this, like drive that you probably couldn't have accessed if you weren't worried about your culture being under threat,
Well, and on top of that, here's a man who defined the Art Nouveau movement.
Mm-hmm.
So he had this tremendous skill set that he had built from years of designing posters and jewelry and buildings, and he was free to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I think artists in general, I think, struggle with is a sense of who are they? Who am I? Am I just the guy who grinds out lots of pictures of bats and worms and chickens? And that serves a purpose. It has value, but where is my voice supposed to fit into this larger world?
Yeah. And a lot of the artists that I've talked to, and this is very like common, is that when they try to be the artist that they think they should be, they don't find the success. And it's only when they realize that they're just going to say, well, fuck it, I'm going to do what I love to do. That's when people take notice.
Yep. It's a scary step to take because you get a lot of pressure in this world to conform.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably even like quadrupled or quintupled for young artists today, as bad as it was for you guys starting out.
Oh, the pressure is intense to have a very strong skill set. You really need to be able to render. You really need to understand light. There is an expectation that when you paint a scene for a video game or for a movie, that you'll be able to hand a painting over to the 3D guys and they will be able to just replicate what is there.
Right.
Which I feel very much steals from both artists.
There is an element of that going on, isn't there?
Yeah, because the 3D people are artists on their own. They should not need to be treated as if they need their hands held.
Right.
And like a great example for me would be if you look through the concept art for Pan's Labyrinth. Mm-hmm. Guillermo del Toro is a guy who really understands the value of old school concept art.
Oh yeah, I think he is a living patron of the arts. Like I've seen him support people who have gone on to become great successes, and he you can tell he gets it. He understands.
Yes. He supported Simon Stalenhag's, all 3 of Stalenhag's books. Or he's at 4 now. And he's one of my absolute favorite concept artists out there.
Right he's now. Fantastic. I mean, he
is. And we talk about a guy who is brilliant at building a narrative.
Yeah.
And he's got very much a Ralph McQuarrie sensibility. One of the things that I love about his work is that he doesn't crowd it. He figures out what the story is that he wants to tell, and he's got that Nordic, that Scandinavian cinematic quality, like Ingmar Bergman.
Right. He's a student of film. So.
Yes. So everything is clean. and uncluttered.
Yeah. He gives space to those like creations for them to exist. Like you're right. You do too much, it'll take away from the impact of that, I forget the name of the creature, but
oh God, that is one of the most brilliant creatures I have seen in
such
film.
A nightmare fuel.
William Stout, man. William Stout. That's the guy who came up with the concept.
Really?
Yep. And again, Del Toro gets concept artists and just lets them be concept artists.
Yeah, I interviewed Vincent Pross, and he got to do In the Shape of Water. He was the concept artist for that film, and
nice.
And it was so great. Del Toro actually showed up at a Comic-Con in a costume with a mask on, and gave him his information and said, "This is who I am." And he was like, I don't really believe that that's him. His wife was like, "No, I think it is." And as it turns out, it was. And then that's how he got started. But yeah, he's just one of the greats. Like he's an auteur. That's the word, right? There's somebody who just,
that's a great word for it. Yeah.
Just everything. It's, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he, busted out good music. It's just like, he's that good at it. But, as you were saying, so do you? Yeah, I can. Well, you do the same thing. I think too with like your spacing, and like it's a great grasp of like the fantastic. Like even something as simple as a mycosynth lattice. I mean, like that's it. It shouldn't be as haunting as it is, but it is. It's very disturbing, and it's so effective. Like,
thank you. Credit where credit is due. I did all of my Mirrodin cards in concert with my friend Cara Mitten. So she didn't get credit on the cards. That was actually her drawing. I painted over the top of it.
Now, what, like, were there, how did that happen? I mean, how did that happen? And was she able to, was she able to get some sort of like acknowledgement from that? I mean, what's the reasons? What's the reason that would go down? I mean, obviously it's out of your hands because you're not the one who prints the names of the people on the cards. Was it just an error, or?
I think it ended up being a bureaucratic error.
Okay.
This was also before, I'm trying to think if there were at least one or two people prior to me and Cara working together, Cara and I working together, that collaborated on pieces, but it was not common.
Right. It's very rare that it is the case. Yeah.
And there was also something that had happened around that time with another artist, where he kind of got in trouble for agreeing to do work and then handing that work over to an apprentice.
Ooh.
And so, yeah, don't do that.
That's
don't do that.
Shitty.com.
Yeah, they did not hire that artist, they hired you. And so I think there was I know actually, because of conversations I had afterwards, that there was some nervousness that I was handing my work over to my junior, which at the time made me really angry because like Cara is a fantastic artist in her own right. You approved her concepts, which means you liked her ideas.
Yeah.
We worked together to make this thing come alive.
Yeah, there is such a thing as collaboration.
Yeah. And it's not even that unusual in the Western world. It happens.
Yeah, people collaborating. Who knew? I mean,
look at a comic book sometime.
Right, exactly. Or like every single thing that human beings have done ever. Like, we can't really do stuff without each other. We're sort of like dogs. If we're alone, we just die of loneliness.
Exactly. Thank you for making that point. Thank you so much. We are not vultures or maned wolves.
Yeah.
We function as a community.
If we don't have each other, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And we don't accomplish anything.
No, I mean, if we were left alone, like we would be like those rats that they hooked them up to the things and they gave them the choice of whether to have food or orgasms. And these rats just sat there and gave themselves orgasms. until they literally were dehydrated. They would do it until they died. It's like, that's sort of what humans are. If like you give us the option to sort of hook into something and not experience it, we'll kill ourselves doing that. We'll, you know,
but we act as air brakes for each other.
Yeah. We thrive when we're doing things, when it's, you know, a project that involves other people. I agree 100%. And
back to the point of producing concepts and then handing them over to illustrators. That collaboration is what made and continues to make Magic cards as cool as they are.
Yeah, yeah. Right? And then there are some cases like Kate and Dmitry Burmak they're a couple from Russia. They do incredible artwork, but they're so a unit that they will finish each other's paintings when one of them's too tired. Like it's just like I'm like, oh my God, could two people be more in love? Like that's just like it's adorable. I'm fascinated by it. But like there's, you know, there's all types of ways to be an artist, right?
And, you know, back to the point of giving people the leeway to play. There is so much pressure to produce a certain kind of art now because it's highly marketable and it serves a lot of purposes. When you produce a work of art that's a concept piece, but it's essentially a finished illustration, you can hand that over to a modeler and there's not a whole lot to interpret at first.
Right.
They can quickly assemble and make accurate to the painting a functioning 3D model until it needs to be animated and then also but at the same time, I very much appreciate it when video games give room for style, when they permit people to play. I love the look that you get from games that like Kirby. I love the look of Kirby's Epic Yarn. That is such a beautiful game. And it is so much fun to play. Or Don't Starve, you know, or Kentucky Route Zero.
I've never heard of Don't Starve.
Oh, Don't Starve is okay. So I love a lot of indie games. I love a lot of small scale games. Don't Starve is a web-based game that is exactly what it sounds like. Your A Night in the Woods is another one where you were stuck in a desolate environment and you got to try and survive. Kentucky Route Zero is a story that is told with beautiful artwork. God, what's another one? Ori and the Blind Forest. If there were Oscars given to video games, that game would absolutely sweep the board.
Yeah, and nobody would hit each other getting up for awards.
No, although it's hell to play. But that world has great diversity of style. You know, you can put Hollow Knight next to Shovel Knight, and they are obviously totally different games, but they have totally different looks.
Yeah,
and I love that. I absolutely love that. I love that there are games like Inside. I love that there are games like a Machinarium, which is going back a number of years, but that remains one of my favorite small scale games.
Do you have any have you sold all of them, or do you have any of your original paintings from Magic and on your possession?
I think I may have one left, but when I switched over to digital, I really just switched over to drawing, just doing underdrawings. So I found it so much. I got so much fun out of doing things digitally that I'm kind of coming back to doing physical paintings now.
Right. It's a full circle kind of thing.
It is, and it's terrifying in a way that digital work isn't, because the brush does not come with an undo.
True. But, you know, I mean, I've talked to so many other artists that are in the same position as you as far as, you know, going digital and then having to go back. But again, it's sort of like, I feel like it's somebody coming back from using a synthesizer and being afraid to playing, the piano. It's like, you'll get it. It'll happen a lot quicker than I think, your fears will have you believe.
No, that's a good point. It's a good point.
Because you can't, everybody I've talked to that has become great at digital and then goes back. I mean, nobody starts out entirely digital their entire life. I mean, as an artist, you have to do some sort of analog along the way. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there, maybe there's some sort of like genius that is just completely computer based, but everyone that I've talked to has a foundation and then went into the digital, and either they stayed there or they went back, but there's always that foundation.
Man, there is a very special sort of ASMR type pleasure of moving a pencil over a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Whether you're writing or drawing, and especially working with pencil, there is a real joy in just sitting with a piece of paper and messing with it until shapes start coming out. Daryl Ritchie is a great example of that, because that's how he works. Alan Williams is another, where they'll both just dust a piece of paper with graphite and they'll start erasing, and then they'll start shading. And yeah, it's both of them have very distinct looks. And they get a lot of that look from starting with a mid-tone and then just carving into it and then making sense of the shapes that they find.
And it looks like my dogs are about to lose it because somebody's walking by down there. So get ready for the barking. I cannot. Okay. Sammy, buddy. Come on, buddy.
What kind of dog?
This is insane. I have 4 Shih Tzus and Chihuahua.
Whoa, that is a herd.
That is a herd. Well, the oldest is 17. So she's
whoa.
Yeah, I know. We got a 17-year-old Shih Tzu who does not mind when I fall asleep. And the second I fall asleep, she will bark me awake and let me know that she's ready to get on the bed. Every night. And she's so adorable, and she's 17 that I can't do anything about it.
Oh man. Okay. That is too cute to get angry at.
Yeah, no, what am I going to do? Like, terrorize the dog that is 17 years old? I mean, like, I don't think there's any way that I would be anything but a monster in that scene.
Well, and also, how could you? I mean, you do that and you don't get the cuddles. It's
that's the thing. It's like, anybody, like if somebody's like, like I meet somebody and like there's a possibility that I could feel something for them, and they're like, I don't like dogs. I'm like, well, that was nice meeting you. I'll see you later. You clearly don't have a soul, and I'm very apologetic for that.
Hey, I am serious when I say I get a little worried about people who don't like animals.
Well, if you don't like animals, period, that's to me the sign of you might be a little bit of a sociopath, because those people like that can't keep animals because they kill them. And so be a dog person, be a cat person, be an iguana person. I don't care. Just don't say you don't like them at all, because it's disturbing.
Yeah, there's something a little loose up in the
yeah. It's like you don't like them because you kill them, and it isn't, and it lets people know. But I digress. But you do these really ornate illustrations, like for your Kickstarter book, which was like, which congratulations on that. But like, oh my goodness, the amount of detail in those sketches. I mean, they're like the way you were describing just before. It's like these people that you look up to, these people, you do a great job of I don't want to say emulate, but just bringing to the table the same kind of dedication that they do.
Thank you. That's high praise, because those are my high watermark artists. The people that I follow are the ones who are I feel like they're brilliant at narrative. Right?
Yeah, that's another thing too that I love, and that I think I connect to artists again who have these stories behind their paintings. And again, I don't believe that it makes a person better than another who doesn't do it. I feel it as a writer. I get drawn to it. It makes me more curious to know more about it. But it's all about taste, and art's subjective, but That's how it goes. I got one more question for you before I let you go. I wanted to know, is there anything that you are working on now that you can talk about that you would like to throw out to the audience?
Okay, so you referenced my art book. The last chapter of that art book has creatures out of a horror story I started writing back in 2015.
Ooh, I love horror.
Me too. I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft and the people of that era. Lord Dunsany and Clark Ashton Smith, Donald Wandre, and their antecedents, if I'm using the right word, Michael Shea, and Brian Lumley.
Yeah.
I love, especially I love the fantasy element of it, of that era, because the people who were writing of that era were very much influenced by the folktales from Ireland and Scotland.
Yeah.
And there's a darkness to those folktales that it's like a really catchy, happy song about losing your lover.
Yeah, or like Luca by Suzanne Vega, where it's a song about child abuse.
Exactly. It's like you're sitting there, it's like, oh, this is a sweet song. Oh my God.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
This is so I started working on a novel that is a love letter to H.P. Lovecraft and Lord Dunsany and Clark Ashton Smith.
Okay.
It's called Walking the Glass, and I had to put it aside for a number of years, and I picked it back up, and I have a loose plan for the rest of the year. Then I get to start working on the novel again, and
bang it out.
My goal, well, I'm 250,000 words in.
Okay.
I'm about halfway to the conclusion of the first book.
Okay, so you banged.
I've worked on it, and I produced a ton of that verbiage during, oh, come on. Now I'm totally forgetting the word for it. It happens in April and in November. It's a writing exercise.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I know that one.
Oh, criminy Christmas.
I was like, the solstice?
Yeah. Isn't that End by Stephen King? Hold on a second here. Let me look this up.
We can, the magic of editing.
Yes, and the internet, which has all the answers in the world.
Except if you ask the internet, why am I here? It has a hard time.
Boy, we get some horrible answers. November and NaNoWriMo. Okay. NaNoWriMo, have you heard of that?
I have not.
Okay, so NaNoWriMo was started by a group of writers who wanted to encourage other writers to write. So the goal was, in November, you would set a target, you would finish a novel, or the point is just write every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It's become a community now where you can sign in, you can form a group and sign it at the end of that day and say 5,000 words today, 3,000 words today. I put about 80,000 words into that beast in November of 2015. And I covered a lot of ground. I'm antsy to get back to it. So keep your fingers crossed. I will get the rough banged out this year, and then I need to start looking for an editor.
Well, hopefully too, also, maybe you discussing it helps manifest it, right? If you speak about it out loud, it sort of wills itself into being.
Yep. Well, and then there's all sorts of paintings that I want to do associated with it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
If you think Simon Stalenhag, I'm going to do that except for horror.
Well, I'm in. I mean,
hey.
That sounds like a pitch for me. I mean, if I was a publisher, I'd be like, yes, and sign here.
Please.
But thank you so much for this conversation. It's been wonderful and very, very, very enlightening.
I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity and talking with me. This wide-ranging conversation about all these different subjects. I have really enjoyed myself.
Anthony is a ray of sunshine. Just a genuine guy. And I would like to apologize for my little political diatribe earlier. I found my Thorazine, and after a couple of dozen of them, I am feeling much calmer. Zen-like, even. Cameraman, let's test the waters. You say something you know would make me angry, and I bet it won't work.
Blood petals.
Bye-bye!